wait for a couple of minutes for those who join us.
Yeah, sure. No problem at all.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. How are you doing? You're okay?
I'm well. Shall I upload my slides now to see?
Yes,
shall I start? Okay.
Yes, please. Yeah. Yes,
just to
please.
test that.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, please. We are waiting for it. Dr. Şentürk, could you please, fix the voices? I hear some unwanted voices.
Okay, I'm just gonna announce it before we start, but at the moment, could you all please unmute your microphones, if you don't mind?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I don't know, can you see any slides yet?
No.
No?
Not yet, no.
Okay. This is strange. It worked before when we tried it.
Right, yes. Last time when we tried, it worked well.
Yeah.
So, Emma, you send it to me as well. For the second plan, I can just download it and upload on behalf of you. Let me see. Okay. So, Emma, are you trying to share your screen or just trying to upload it?
I'm trying to share my screen.
So, if it is PowerPoint slides, what you can do, I'm just going to show you. Just a second. Okay, So do you see the arrow now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then you click this one.
Yeah.
And then you say upload.
Yeah,
browse,
that's what I've done.
Yeah, browse from my computer.
Yeah, so that's what I've done. It's just not working.
Okay, I'll try it as well then. Just a second.
Dear guests, could you please kindly switch off your microphones and webcams? Thank you in advance.
Are you trying to upload the slides from your end, Selçuk?
Yeah, I'll sort it out. Yeah,
it's really strange because it worked so well when we tried before.
Have time. Emma, take it easy, please. Selçuk will fix it. No problem soon.
Great.
So, Emma, I'm just trying it as well, and it's not responding at all.
Yeah, exactly. It's not working for me. It's not working for you.
So, shall we just log out and log in back? Shall we try this one?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And Professor Şekerci, could you please just end the session so that we can log in back?
I'll. Okay, then. So we will log in again, right?
Okay, just end the session, please, from the arrow, and then we will log back in. So this is technology, you know, it is always the same.
Okay, I think it's going to work this time.
Yeah, here we go. Great.
Okay, so that's slide 1. Now can you see slide 2?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay. So we can wait for a couple of minutes more before we start. Okay.
As you can see, I have my Christmas decorations up.
It looks great. It looks great.
Merry Christmas, Dr. Parker.
Thank you. Thank you. Our term ends on Friday, so everybody's getting ready for Christmas here.
You're right. Okay, then I mean, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, Dr. Parker, if you don't mind, I'd like to, introduce you in brief to the virtual audience, by the way. So, ladies and gentlemen,
Hocam, can we wait for some time? Because it's not yet time.
It's totally up to Professor Parker.
Yeah, no, let's give it 2 minutes and wait till 12 o'clock in case people...
Yes, please.
Okay,
that's fine.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Anyway, so it is being recorded, yes, Selçuk?
Yes, hocam, yep.
Okay, no problem then, just to be safe.
So do you have snow in where you are in Turkey?
Actually, not really, but some parts of Turkey, yes, eastern parts, especially where Selçuk lives, is snowy, it's winter time. But I mean, Süleyman Demirel University, Isparta is somehow in, in the west, south and west. So it is sunny today, but on the top of mountains, so it's covered by some snow somehow. Actually, we have been experiencing unusual weather. You see, climate change is everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's December already, but as if it's like early spring somehow.
So it was supposed to be minus 30, 35, minus 35.
Wow.
In this time, but it is just about 2 or 3 centigrade, and that's it.
Wow. That's a big difference, yeah. And here we've had lots of flooding. It's also quite mild. And
so how is Leicester, by the way? How is Leicester?
It's the same. You know, the motto, university's motto is always the same. Okay. Or the city's motto in Latin, it means always the same.
Always the same, good. Yeah. Okay, if you don't mind, we can start now. We are about 60 in attendance now, so it is really good number, but it will go up in a couple of minutes as well. Okay, Emma, can I just start now, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Okay, I all thank you, everybody. So today we will have Dr. Ömer Parker from University of Leicester, and my colleague, Professor Şekerci, will soon introduce Dr. Parker. And then I just would like to say a couple of things on the nature of the lectures we are just organizing by 2 public universities. So you all know that we are going through a hard time, maybe the hardest time ever. But I believe we are quite lucky compared to other people, because we are humans of letter. So that means we have a power that keeps us connected and motivated. So here is the idea. So as in academic lecture series, we are trying to promote student intellectual development and learning in the challenging time of the COVID-19. So we are having distinguished professor overseas like Dr. Ömer Parker in here. So I hope you will enjoy our lectures and make most of it. And just relax, and then get your faculties ready, and it will be a perfect lecture today. And I'm just, as a final note, I would like you to unmute yourself in order to not to confuse the voices, you know. So if you keep yourself away from your keyboards, I mean the settings, then that will be great. Now, my colleague, Professor Şekerci, will introduce Dr. Ömer Parker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Şentürk. Dear guests, dear friends, I welcome you all. Thank you so much for honoring us today. Also, our special thanks goes to Professor Parker. So please let me introduce Dr. Parker briefly to you. Dr. Ömer Parker is an expert on post-war and contemporary literature, especially women's writing, and is interested in issues relating to gender and sexuality. She is a founder member of the Contemporary Women's Writing Association and a former co-editor of the journal Contemporary Women's Writing 2012-2017, published by Oxford University Press, and winner of the Council of Editors of Learned Journals Best New Journal Award 2009. She has delivered public talks at Tate Britain, the British Film Institute, the National Justice Museum, the Postal Museum, Latitude Festival, and Homotopia, and her research has been featured on the BBC Radio 4 programs Today, Women's Hour, and Front Row. In 2018, she won a Saboteur Award, an award for India Arts, sponsored by Arts England and the East Midlands Women's Award for Outstanding Woman in Arts, Media and Music. She is the recipient of a University Leicester Discovering Excellence Award for Equalities 2018, a Research Impact Award for Best Public Engagement 2017, and an Inspirational Woman Award 2015. Thank you so much. Before leaving the floor to Professor Parker, actually let me, remind you that this event is on the air now on Süleyman Demirel University Science TV, and also it is on the air on YouTube as well. Thank you so much. So enjoy the lecture. Yes, Professor Parker, the floor is yours. Thank you. We are listening to you.
Thank you. Thank you for a lovely introduction from Professor Selçuk Şentürk and Professor Ömer Şekerci. It's an honour to be invited to speak to members of Kafkas University and SDU. Thank you for hosting me today. So the title of my lecture is Whatever Happened to Feminist Fiction? Following the emergence of second wave feminism in the USA and the UK in the 1960s, literature played a major role in the dissemination of the aims and ideals of the women's liberation movement, an organisation that sought to end sexism and the oppression of women. Feminist Publishing in this period, represented by publishing houses founded in the 70s and the 80s like Virago, the Women's Press and Pandora, carved out a space for women writers in an overwhelmingly male literary field, launching the careers of authors such as Michelle Roberts, Pat Barker and Jeanette Winterson. Their debut novels, A Piece of the Night, Union Street and Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, epitomise feminist fiction in their opposition to patriarchal culture and resistance to gender norms that affirm male dominance and female submission. Although the women's liberation movement inspired a literary revolution, the critic Gail Green laments what she calls the retreat of feminist fiction towards the end of the 1980s. The illusion of gender equality created by British and American legal and social reform gave rise to what has been called post-feminism, reflected in fiction that recedes from the themes, concerns and strategies characteristic of politically conscious texts of preceding decades. But I want to argue that feminist fiction has not expired but evolved in tandem with developments in feminist thought and the shifting conditions of women's lives. So in this talk, I want to look at two specific aspects of feminist fiction. Firstly, the changing conception of freedom from proto-feminism through second-wave feminism to third-wave or post-feminism. And secondly, the diversification and increasing inclusivity of feminist fiction, particularly in regards to race and culture, sexuality, motherhood, and men. My aim is to show that literature that engages with the legacies of the women's liberation movement acquires new shapes in response to changing social, political and literary landscapes, but continues to offer an invaluable critique of inequality as well as an empowering vision of alternative worlds. In novels published prior to the women's liberation movement, feminist fiction exists mainly as an undercurrent. In contrast to Muriel Spark's cautious feminism, characteristic of women writers of her generation, Spark was born in 1918 and began publishing in 1957. In contrast to her, quasi or proto-feminist novels, quasi or proto-feminist novels like Lynn Reed Banks' The L-Shaped Room and Margaret Drabble's The Millstone feature heroines who pursue social and sexual independence. Similarly, Melanie in Angela Carter's novel The Magic Toy Shop refuses to be a puppet of patriarchy or a living doll. Can I just check that you're seeing what I'm seeing? Are you now seeing a cover of The Magic Toy Shop?
It is slide 7 now, Emma. Slide 7.
Okay, does it say The Magic Toy Shop?
Yeah, it says, it says.
Okay, thank you. So of this group of proto-feminist novels, the most famous is Doris Lessing's The Golden Notebook. Lessing's groundbreaking novel follows the character Anna Wolfe and her friend Molly as they struggle towards liberation in a frame narrative titled Free Women. This focuses on the problem of female identity and ascribes value to aspects of female experience previously overlooked or ignored, trivialized in literature. Although Doris Lessing never aligned herself with the women's liberation movement and in fact distanced herself from feminism across her career, this novel, The Golden Notebook, pursues Virginia Woolf's aim to, quote, tell the truth about my own experiences as a body. For example, Lessing includes the first Tampax in literature, making it exemplary of feminist fiction. In the 1970s, writers directly influenced by second wave feminism examined the sources of female oppression and protest, highlighting women's status as the second sex through what has come to be called the consciousness-raising novel. Faye Weldon's early work, for example, is populated by unhappy housewives trapped in narrow and mundane domestic roles that render them powerless and unimportant. In Remember Me, published in 1976, Margot, quote, cooks the 5,323rd dinner of her married life. In Praxis, also by Faye Weldon, published in 1978, women provide men with, quote, sex, comfort, company, and secretarial services. Second-wave feminist fiction like this challenges patriarchal definitions of womanhood and femininity. These are novels in which a female protagonist often embarks on a journey of self-discovery, a journey towards self-definition that transforms her from a passive object into an active subject. Such novels adopt and adapt the Bildungsroman, or novel of development, by inserting a woman into a genre that has traditionally focused on men. In contrast to the plot of canonical novels, which invariably lead women to marriage or death, second-wave feminist fiction typically closes with the heroine facing a future replete with possibility. Echoing Betty Friedan's question, who knows what women can be when they're finally free to be themselves? In the 1980s, several women writers turned from domestic realism to fantasy. Weldon's The Life and Loves of a She-Devil, published in 1983, and Angela Carter's Nights at the Circus, published in 1984, reject realism in favour of darkly comic fantasies that examine the social construction of femininity. Gleefully embracing badness, Weldon's protagonist sets out to ruin the lives of her cheating husband and her mistress, his mistress, Mary Fisher. When ugly 6'2" Ruth transforms herself into a replica of her beautiful nemesis, she is literally and metaphorically reduced by having several inches surgically removed from her legs. Ruth's claim that, quote, "I want to look up to men," satirizes patriarchal definitions of desirable femininity that glamorize female subordination. In Carter's Magic Realist, Nights at the Circus, a 19th century winged circus aerialiste suggests that gender is a matter of performance, artifice, and illusion. The postmodern narrative strategies employed by Faye Weldon and Angela Carter disrupt the conventions of literature as well as gender, pointing to a relationship between sexual and textual politics that's characteristic of feminist fiction. In the 1990s, women writers considered the meaning of freedom in the face of post-feminism or third-wave feminism. This was a period when feminism was considered to have achieved its goals and become redundant. Helen Fielding's novel Bridget Jones's Diary, published in 1996, queries the meaning of post-feminist freedom, anticipating concerns articulated in Angela McRobbie's book, The Aftermath of Feminism. Bridget illustrates McRobbie's argument that since the 1990s, the equation of liberation with economic independence and sexual freedom has produced a faux or false feminism, and the illusion of equality has left patriarchy firmly in place. The financial rewards of work that endow Bridget with the freedom to shop suggest that women's entry into the labour market supports capitalism, not feminism. Further, Bridget confirms McRobbie's observation that women have only been allowed to advance on condition that they retain a sense of feminine vulnerability and sexual desirability. Despite her professional success, Bridget's search for Mr. Right and allusions to Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice indicate that she remains enthralled to romance and emotionally dependent on men for a sense of self-worth. By contrasting Bridget's progress in private and public realms, the novel underlines the importance of what Susan Stanford Friedman calls locational feminism, which acknowledges the contradictory subject positions women hold in different contexts and different situations. Fielding exposes the contradictions in Bridget's life by contrasting her words and deeds. Bridget buys Susan Faludi's feminist bestseller Backlash, but she reads Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, a guide to romantic relationships that endorses essentialist gender stereotypes. Bridget's predilection for shopping, glamour and romance make her the poster girl for post-feminism, a movement that sought to reclaim aspects of femininity repudiated by some second wavers as frivolous or disempowering. But while Bridget resembles the heroines of chick lit, the genre that Fielding's novel inspired, Bridget Jones's Diary is a cautionary tale about depoliticised, free market and one-dimensional feminism that is concerned with little more than the economic advancement of individual women. So now I want to think about the diversification of feminist fiction, starting with a consideration of race. While second-wave feminism focused on women's liberation in the 1970s and 80s, other struggles tended to remain peripheral. But in the 1990s, insights from post-colonial and queer discourse, coupled with changes wrought by globalization and digitization, shifted the critical terrain, creating what is sometimes referred to as third-wave feminism. Like the challenges posed to mainstream Western feminism by scholars such as Gayatri Chakravorty Spivak, Chandra Talpady Mahanti and Hazel Karbi, Novels by Black and Asian women contest the universalism and ethnocentrism of feminist fiction by foregrounding racial difference. So as the protagonist of Ravinder Randhawa's novel A Wicked Old Woman, published in 1987, notes, quote, "We're in different boats on different seas. Women aren't women only," indicating that we need to take factors other than gender into account. Likewise, Joan Riley's novel The Unbelonging, published in 1985, stresses the intersection of systems of oppression that place women in a position of double jeopardy through her protagonist, Hyacinth, who suffers racial discrimination and domestic violence. By contesting established narratives about migration and diaspora that privilege male experience, novels such as Sam Selvon's The Lonely Londoners, post-colonial feminist fiction underscores the importance of a polyvocal coalitional politics that takes accounts of various facets of identity and not gender or race alone. The double jeopardy of being black, of being female and black or Asian persists as a theme in the fiction of Andrea Levy, Mira Sayal and Bernardine Evaristo. Andrea Levy's novel Every Light in the House Burning, published in 1994, or Never Far From Nowhere, published in 1996, and Fruit of the Lemon, published in 1999, depict the struggle for self-realization of young working-class black girls in Britain. Mira Sayal's Anita and Me, also published in 1996, features a heroine called Mina, initially a girl who seeks acceptance through assimilation into the overwhelmingly white Midlands town of Tollington. Mina refuses to wear Indian clothes, longs to eat fish fingers, and laughs at racist jokes. She even wishes to shed her skin and be reborn, quote, pink and unrecognisable. That is, she longs to be white. But after her Indian grandmother visits, Mina embraces her cultural heritage. She rejects Anita, the friend who purports to be an ally, but who engages in racial violence. As indicated by the primacy of Anita's name in the title of Mira Sayal's novel, the relationship between Anita and Mina initially reproduces England's colonial relationship with India. But during the course of the novel, Mina learns to reconceive difference as personally and socially enriching. And Mira Sayal celebrates hybridity, epitomised by her heroine's rendition of Punjabi songs in a Birmingham accent. Bernardine Evaristo's emphasis on cultural hybridity is reflected in the transgression of formal boundaries in her novels in verse Lara, published in 1997, The Emperor's Babe, published in 2001, and the novel with verse Soul Tourists, published in 2005. Set in Roman London, The Emperor's Babe centres on a character called Zuleika, the wife of a Roman general who becomes the emperor's mistress. A postmodern pastiche both of historical fiction and chick lit, this novel points to the liberating potential of identities that are no longer determined by cultural roots, as well as the struggle for freedom faced by women defined by their relationship to men. The novel blends comedy and tragedy, destabilizing the boundaries of genre as well as form. It combines contemporary jargon, Cockney rhyming slang, Scots dialect, Creole and Latin, creating a linguistic virtuosity that collapses the line between past and present, as well as conveying the cultural plurality of Londinium, which is the name that Evaristo gives to her fictional version of Roman London. Free verse reflects a desire for release from restraints, and the novel employs couplets. The couplets typically employed in epic poetry about the heroic adventures of a man. Here they are used to describe the everyday life of a woman. Without overlooking culturally specific forms of oppression, Muslim women writers challenged the prevailing Western perception that Islam is intrinsically patriarchal. Novels such as Monica Ali's Brick Lane, published in 2003, and Leila Aboulila's Minaret, published in 2005, resist Western stereotypes of Muslim women as weak and oppressed, a task that acquired additional significance in the wake of the Islamophobia arising from the terrorist attacks on the US on September the 11th, 2001, and in London on the 7th of July 2005, especially in a context where female oppression has been used as a justification for the so-called war on terror. In Ali's novel Brick Lane, the protagonist Nanzeen acquires a sense of agency as she adapts to life in London's East End. And the novel subverts the dominant narrative of diaspora by concluding with her husband's return to Bangladesh while she remains in Britain, an independent woman. Whereas second-wave feminist fiction redefines the concept of woman, queer feminist fiction deconstructs identity categories. In tandem with Judith Butler's desire to make gender trouble, queer characters in feminist fiction defy the binary categories of identity and desire. Here's some examples. Sarah Waters' Tipping the Velvet, published in 1998, and Affinity, published in 1999, both undermine a binary conception of gender through the motif of cross-dressing, of transvestism. Such novels demonstrate Butler's assertion that identity is performative, a matter of doing rather than being. Throughout her work, Jeanette Winterson privileges queerness through multiple fluid and illegible genders. The Passion, published in 1987, accents gender and sexual ambiguity through a cross-dressing bisexual heroine, Villanelle, a woman who defies patriarchal tradition by becoming a Venetian gondolier and who possesses webbed feet, a feature, according to legend, only of boat men. Written on the Body, published in 1992, refuses to disclose the gender of its bisexual protagonist, implying the redundancy and irrelevance of gender categories. The uncertain gender of Ali or Alex in the Power Book, published in 2000, points to the emancipating potential of cyberspace, where gender doesn't have to be visibly declared. While The Stone Gods, published in 2007, exploits the promise of the cyborg, a figure that, according to Donna Haraway, is post-gender. Like Sarah Waters, Winterson highlights the convergence between feminist and queer politics by repeatedly undermining the structures of heteropatriarchy. In addition to race and sexuality, another area of change in feminist fiction concerns motherhood. Fay Weldon's early novels present maternity as a misfortune, something to be resisted or escaped. For example, in her 1980 novel Puffball, Liffey, her protagonist, feels repulsed by the puffball mushroom that resembles her pregnant belly. Debunking the myth of maternal instinct, the novel refutes the natural identification of womanhood with motherhood. In The Passion of New Eve, Angela Carter also satirises the glorification of motherhood by rendering her character Mother with 2 rows of multiple breasts. She is a figure who is absolutely grotesque. As well as shunning motherhood, early feminist fiction often focuses on mother-daughter conflict. Mothers are typically rejected by daughters who fear sharing their fate or despise their mothers as agents of patriarchy who condition daughters to embody normative femininity. However, in the novels of Michelle Roberts, there is always a transformative shift from mother-daughter alienation to reconciliation. Flesh and Blood is just one example where we see this. Similarly, Kate Atkinson interweaves stories of mothers and daughters in her first novel, Behind the Scenes at the Museum, published in 1996. Here, the narrative of protagonist Ruby Lennox is interspersed with a series of chapter-long footnotes that relate the lives of her mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. While Ruby's story foregrounds the pain of maternal deprivation, details of her mother's life explain her lack of maternal nurturance and generate sympathy for a woman who has been pronounced a monster by her daughter. So the novel suggests that the myth of the perfect mother, the patriarchal myth of the perfect mother, engenders mother-daughter conflict, demonstrating how patriarchy frustrates a potentially empowering mother-daughter bond. In the 1990s, the mother's perspective, rather than that of the daughter, comes much more clearly into view. For example, in Helen Simpson's collection of stories, Four Bare Legs in a Bed, published in 1990, a collection of stories that introduces the theme of maternal ambivalence, a theme that runs throughout her work. Rachel Cusk also queries the joys of motherhood in her novel Arlington Park, published in 2006. A new interest in the plight of mothers that we see here is accompanied by a new perspective on older women, reflecting concerns about an ageing population in Britain and the redefinition of old age. Doris Lessing's novel Love Again, published in 1996, exemplifies this concern with older women. It features a 65-year-old widow whose lust for life is accompanied by an implacable desire for much younger men. If feminist fiction has embraced a wider range of female experience since the 1960s, it has also broadened its focus to encompass men. Alongside the new critical assessment of masculinity initiated by scholars such as Michael Kimmel and R.W. Connell in the 1980s, novels like Alasdair Gray's 1982 Janine, published in 1984, and Graham Swift's Last Orders, published in 1996, depict men who are damaged or beleaguered by their adherence to the patriarchal norms of masculinity. Men are also the central subject of novels like Zadie Smith's The Autograph Man, published in 2002, a novel about a man-boy or slacker masculinity, and Bernardine Evaristo's Mr. Loverman, published in 2013, which addresses the complexities of gay black masculinity, unsettling a binary model of male power and female powerlessness. Novels like these demonstrate that today women don't have to be either the authors or the subject of feminist fiction as they were in the 1960s and 1970s. So, in conclusion, the combination of continuities and change
Emma, excuse me, we cannot hear you. when you said in conclusion, we couldn't get you following. I think your microphone was unmuted. Muted, sorry, so could you please unmute it?
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? I don't know how it became muted.
Yeah, from the point you said in conclusion, we lost you.
Okay, no problem. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
Right, the last word.
Okay.
You.
All right. In conclusion, the combination of continuities and change in feminist fiction defies a linear narrative of development. New forms of feminist fiction exist alongside old, illustrating that literature concerned with issues relating to gender and sexuality has proliferated since the 1960s. Fiction continues to be inspired and revitalized by feminism, just as feminist politics continue to be enriched and renewed by fiction. Feminist narratives have evolved in conjunction with the changing conditions and political contexts of women's lives. But the post-millennial re-entrenchment of patriarchy confirms that pronouncements about the redundancy of feminism and the decline of feminist fiction are premature. Its influence and relevance remain profound. Literature that engages with the legacies of the women's liberation movement affirms that feminism is an unfinished revolution and continues to insist on the possibility and necessity of social change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Parker. If you don't mind, before having questions from the virtual audience, I have only one, somehow, what a tiny, small discussion question or so. You know, a life-size statue of Virginia Woolf is being built now in London.
Yeah.
Mary Wollstonecraft's statue was unveiled last month. Undeniably, they both deserve to be honored. There is, it's undeniable fact that Woolf is regarded as one of the best-known modernist writers of the early 20th century and an innovator of stream of consciousness. Women have a lot of catching up to do when it comes to statues. They are represented by only 174 statues of 828 statues according to 2018 survey. So it is known that Wollstonecraft and Woolf were born into wealthy families, and their writing is steeped in language and ideology of British Empire. So my question is, how come do you think do they, really represent all women? Thank you.
Well, thank you for that very thoughtful question. Mary Wollstonecraft and Virginia Woolf don't represent all women, and that's why we need more statues of more women and a greater diversity of in statues. So it's true that there are hardly any statues of women. So I do welcome the statues of Wollstonecraft and Woolf. They are the mothers of women's writing and feminist fiction, so they deserve to be recognised and celebrated. But there are so many more women in literature and beyond the field of literature who have made a huge contribution to women's writing and to feminism. In fact, Millicent Fawcett has also been recognised with a statue in Parliament Square. It's the first statue of a woman in Parliament Square. But this is just a beginning, and we need to do so much more work to recognise the contribution of women to literature and to cultural life in general.
Yeah, unfinished revolution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That has been a fascinating lecture, as always before. And I have a question, but I will keep it to the end to give some more chance to our students, if you don't mind. So, any questions from our students or from our professors? here today.
So, anyone who has a question, please raise your hands, then we will give. All right then. Okay, Merve Gül, Koca Bıyık, yes please.
I know we are here to discuss literature and view feminism through literature, but there's this question itching in the back of my mind since this conference been announced. I see the modern day feminism as maybe you know the term social justice warriors. There's this literal obnoxious level of femininity that I see. Even I heard women shaving their hair and call other women shaving their body hair. Like, you're conforming to patriarchal ideas. You're not a true feminist just because they want to keep their body hygienic enough for their own views, or try to abolish any menstrual products because they invented by men, such as tampons being invented by unknown gender of Dr. Evelyn. I want to hear your opinions about that, if you don't mind talking about it.
Well, I think that this relates to, thank you for your question, Merv. This feminism isn't a unified body of thought, and feminists have always argued with each other. There's always been a diversity of opinion, which I think is valuable in feminist thinking. But the particular conflict I think you're referring to is often understood as being a conflict between second wave and third wave feminists. So in the 1990s and the noughties, there was a split between younger generation of women and older generation of women who were associated with the second wave. And the second wave, for example, rejected femininity and beauty and glamour and romance as patriarchal tools of oppression. And then younger women emerged that said, actually, we want to re-embrace those concepts and redefine them. So that is part of that conflict, and I think it's often generational. What do you think about it, Merv? Do you think that, I mean, younger women often thought that older feminists were intolerant and were dictating what they had to do. But there is no handbook of feminist rules. You know, there isn't a party line that you have to toe to be a feminist. My own view is that, you know, women make their own choices, and what I want is for women to have choice. Though I always ask questions about what choice really means, and I think it's always worth asking, to what extent is our choice really freely made, or is it influenced by prevailing power structures? That is the question I always want to ask. Why have people made that choice? What do you think?
To be honest, I'm speaking for myself because I can't read through other people's minds. And as a person, as a woman brought up in boys, like literally, I was the youngest female for 18 years of my family. And as my expression of myself, I'm much more gender fluid than what society wants me to be. I don't usually wear pink or any feminine colors. I'm using air quotes here. Or, I don't know, for as far as I know myself, I always had short hair and things that be called unfeminine. And what I think it is, people should be free, and as with the coming of the second decade of 21st century, I see that more people want to be free to express themselves and be more fluid, because there's now a huge flow of LGBTQ literature and LGBTQ media. I want to see that people can express themselves freely, because we all, except from some genetic disordered people, we only have like some genetic attributes that are familiar, such as 46 chromosomes. I mean, for example, myself, I have 46 chromosomes, and I am born with a genetic birth defect that made me born with red birthmarks. But I'm a human nonetheless, or such as any other person on this planet who has a different preference who to love or how to clothe and express themselves. For example, as a woman, I would like to have the chance to dress in suit and tie, not in a dress. I mean, I don't remember any day that I wore a skirt in high school. I just always wear pants. So what I'm seeing is, in this modern day and age, we all should be accepting and less diversified, although social media makes us more diverse and diverse because everybody has the chance to express their opinions.
Yeah, thank you. So I think I agree. I tried to touch on this in the talk, that where second wave feminism sought to redefine what it means to be a woman and sought to reject a patriarchal definition of femininity, from the 1990s onwards, queer feminist writers seek to transcend gender altogether as a restrictive category and seek to celebrate gender fluidity and indeterminacy. Thank you.
Okay. Any question for Professor Parker, please? The audience. Any more questions?
And again, a mind-burning one.
Yes, please.
Okay. Or if people don't have questions, I would welcome the chance to hear from students and lecturers, tutors in Turkey about where feminist fiction features on your syllabus.
Right.
Okay, so we have one question. Hatice Buket Aslantaş from Kafkas University, I think. Yes, Hatice.
Hi, Emma.
Hello.
I am Buket from Kafkas University, as Selçuk teacher said it. And I'm interested in Margaret Atwood's works. And I want to ask to you, why does generally our tendency create negative structure on feminist fiction? Her dystopias makes me scared, actually.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think Margaret Atwood is brilliant. She might be my favourite writer, and I'm really upset that she's never been given the Nobel Prize for Literature. She really deserves it, and she's getting very old, so they need to hurry up and give it to her. I think that feminist fiction suggests that women should be scared. I think it suggests that women should be angry because the world is frightening, and I think it's the situation for women is getting worse rather than better. In recent years, we are living through, globally, we are seeing a rise in conservatism. This is perhaps most clear in the USA through the presidency of Donald Trump, where there has been an assault on women's rights. For example, the rolling back of abortion rights, just to give one example, but also there's been an attack on LGBT rights in the USA. So, and this is combined with, climate crisis and the control of big pharma by patriarchal institutions. I think Atwood is suggesting that we need to be alarmed because the world is quite frightening, and we need to wake up to that rather than being complacent and believing the myth, which we are sold all the time, that women now have achieved equality. At least in Britain and America, that is the myth that we are given. And Atwood is encouraging us to see through that myth. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it is. I see clearly now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Maybe a final question before we take your questions, Emma. Yep, the final one. Okay. So Yeşim Sultan Akbay and Gizem Ünal. I think we have two questions, if you don't mind. and from women. Yep. Yes, Yeşim, we can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the marvelous timeline you have provided us, Dr. Parker. My question is a bit different from others. So, in quite an interesting time where we are heading towards having our voices in a digitalized world, where do you really think the feminist fiction is heading towards?
Well, that's such a good question. So, the story I've tried to tell about feminist fiction is one of evolution. So I've tried to show that the way that feminist fiction changes in accordance with the changing conditions of women's lives and broader changes in culture. So I definitely think we're at a moment now, and I didn't say too much about this, where feminist fiction doesn't focus just on gender anymore. So a writer like Ali Smith, who is somebody I didn't talk about, will write a novel about Brexit, for example, you know, a political issue, or feminist writers might write about climate crisis. The sort of broader political issues of the day, but they do it from a woman-centered perspective and with a feminist consciousness. So that's the difference between the way that feminist writers engage with these issues and other writers engage with these issues. They're no longer writing just about gender or just about women's struggle for liberation, but taking a broader political perspective, but approaching it from a feminist point of view. That's what's happening now. In terms of what happens next, I don't know, but it's exciting to find out how feminist fiction will evolve. Do you have any ideas about any predictions about what will happen?
Well, no idea, but I'm quite disturbed with the digitalized version of, being present in the digitalized world is quite a different thing and a new thing to the world. But, hope we will have the classical, way.
Yeah. I mean, the digital world is an interesting one, cyberspace, and Jeanette Winston writes very much about this. It's a world that seems to be full of feminist potential because of its opportunity, the opportunity it offers to transcend gender. You don't have to declare your gender online. You can have an ambivalent gender, but with online platforms like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all of the others, what we see is that these spaces become very male dominated and very patriarchal very quickly. So there is, patriarchy constantly reinvents itself, constantly adapts. It's a bit like the COVID virus. It's constantly mutating to adapt to new conditions, which means that we feminists, we have to be ever vigilant and ever resistant to its new forms. I agree with you. There are things to be concerned about. There are opportunities and dangers related to digitization and online platforms.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions, please? If not, Gizem Ünal, yes, please. Miss Ünal, we are listening to you.
Hi, Dr. Parker. Can I ask something?
Hello. Yes.
I read The Yellow Wallpaper and Herland by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Could you say anything about it? I mean about Gilman and her works, because I didn't see name of Gilman's on this conference. Thank you.
Yeah. So I didn't talk about Gilman because she's writing from an earlier period. I've been talking about fiction that has been published because it's directly influenced by the women's liberation movement that emerged in the 1960s. So Gilman's writing at the beginning of the 20th century. She's a brilliant writer. I love The Yellow Wallpaper. And she is part of a group of writers at the end of the 19th. She's writing in the 1890s, Gilman, actually, isn't she? So a kind of women writers of the fin de siècle. And that's part of the first wave of feminism, when the suffragettes in Britain and America were campaigning for women's legal rights. So her work links more directly to those earlier struggles. But I certainly think that the novella, The Yellow Wallpaper, is brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And it's worth reading Gilman's other novels as well. The Yellow Wallpaper, particularly good on the family and medicine as patriarchal institutions that control women. You're a fan of Gilman?
Yes, I read most of them, his work. Just I can ask this, two of them work.
Yeah, thanks for your question.
Okay, Emma, I have a quick question, really quick. So, if you were to offer another way of feminist activity, how would you name it?
I wouldn't name it, actually. I mean, people do talk about a fourth wave, but personally, I think the idea of waves is a bit overused. I would like to see us develop an alternative way of thinking about the evolution of feminism. I think it becomes a bit silly to talk about. Well, you know, I can see that there are 3 distinct waves, but now every 5 minutes it feels like somebody's saying, "Oh, we're in a new wave," or it's the 5th wave, the 6th wave, the 7th wave, and I'm not completely convinced by that.
So you don't like classifications then?
Well, that's a really good question. Classifications can be useful. And you could make this same argument about the term woman. You know, do we want to hang on to the term woman, or do we want to move beyond gender altogether? I mean, some feminists would argue that we can't afford to abandon binary gender and the term woman, because we need the term woman to campaign for women's rights, and we haven't finished campaigning for women's rights. So I would say that I am skeptical of classification and wary of classification, but sometimes classification can be very useful too in terms of identity politics. If you want to, you know, if you have an identity that has made you feel invisible in history, then affirming that identity, affirming the label that makes you visible, can be very empowering. So that's true for women writers, that's true for gay writers, that's true for black writers.
Okay.
So, yeah, sometimes labels are good, sometimes they're not good.
Okay, thank you. So now it is your turn. We just leave it to you to ask some questions if you like. So,
was there a question from Fatma?
Yeah, okay, yeah, we got it. Fatma.
Fatma Kılıncoğlu. Yes, Fatma Kılıncoğlu, please. Miss Kılıncoğlu.
Hello.
My name is Fatma
Louder,
Kılınçoğlu.
please. Fatma, louder, please. We hardly hear you.
Okay, is it okay right now?
Okay, it's all right then. Clear cut. Go on, please.
Crystal clear,
Fine.
yeah.
Okay. My name is Fatma Kılınçoğlu from Kafkas University. And thank you for your impressive speech.
Thank you.
As far as I know, the word feminism is derived from the word woman in Latin. While feminist fiction criticizes gender inequality and dominant culture, I think it should be criticized that this word, which is included in these concepts, comes only from women, because it's more correct for me to criticize this situation with a word that has no color. What do you think?
So are you taking issue with the word feminism? You don't like the word feminism?
I'm sorry?
Is your point, Fatma, are you saying that you don't like the word feminism? You think the word feminism is problematic?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, some people don't want to identify as feminists because they don't like the word feminism. And they say, oh, why can't we talk about humanism? You know, we want a term for equality and social justice that includes men. I like the word feminism. I'm going to defend the use of the word feminism because I think the history of feminist thought is really important, and I don't want to lose sight of that history. And I don't think that feminism is exclusive of men. It's not exclusionary. I don't see why the term would need to exclude men. Feminism definitely needs men as allies, and it needs men to be supportive of feminism. Lots of women aren't feminists, lots of men are. But I don't really understand why people object to the word feminism myself. Yeah.
Yes, I got it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. I think it seems there is no question, no more questions. So actually, I mean, look, a final question, not on feminism, Emma. Let's say I am a student at university. I want to further my higher education in the UK or in Europe. What would you like to offer, or what kind of things, I mean, waiting for us over there?
Yeah. Well, at the University of Leicester, we have a suite of MAs on offer. I am director of the MA in Modern and Contemporary Literature, which is an MA that covers the 20th century and 21st century. So if you would like to specialise your studies and develop your research in that field, please do email me and I'd be delighted to tell you more about the course. At Leicester, we also offer the oldest MA in Victorian Studies in the UK. So we're a centre for excellence in Victorian Studies. And if you already have an MA, or you're looking to do an MA and do a PhD as well, you can find expert tuition all over the UK, of course. And at Leicester, we can offer PhD supervision in all fields of the canon, all literary periods. But I'd be particularly pleased to hear from anybody that might be interested in doing a PhD or an MA dissertation on women's writing and feminist fiction. And I'm particularly keen to learn. I would love to supervise a PhD on Turkish women's writing or Turkish feminist fiction. So that it hasn't been done. So if anybody is interested in doing that, please contact me.
Excellent. It sounds great. Thank you. So any questions, dear guests, dear virtual guests? Professor Parker, actually, please accept our heartfelt thanks. It was very inspiring, enjoyable, and then time just flew away with you. And so we would like to host you after coronavirus pandemic, I mean, has been eradicated. So we would like to host you and welcome you in Turkey. So thank you so much for the invitation, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yeah. Thank you so much for hosting me. Thank you to everybody for attending. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And
thank you. Bye.
It has been a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Değerli dostlar, herkese teşekkür ediyoruz katılımlarından dolayı. İyi akşamlar diliyorum. Görüşmek üzere.
İyi akşamlar Sayın Hocam. Emeğinize, elinize sağlık.